Hey, what's going on guys? Today we are going to be going through the top 15 best late game champions that wreck hard. So if you want to find out who they are, make sure to watch this video all the way through to the end. With that said, enjoy the video guys. Games in League of Legends can vary depending on the game mode, the makeup of the team, and of course, how much you're wrecking in lane or being destroyed in lane. If the teams are made of meta picks and you have no trolls in the game, which sadly happens more than we want, you will more likely reach the late game. Some champions have super strong early game kits, while others destroy once the late game begins. So if you want to find out who are the best late game champions, let's jump into it. On number 15 we have Bard. While Bard is played as a support more often than not, sometimes you'll see him in a different position in the Rift. AP Bard is a late game champ that relies on punishing any enemy that makes a mistake. If Bard is able to land his Q, Cosmic Binding, to stun 2 enemies, the rest of your team can pick them off. Bard works as a disruptor to the game. His ultimate, Tempered Fate, should be used to catch multiple enemies out and freeze them, to allow your team to surround and conquer or divide and conquer. One good Bard ultimate can change the whole team fight. Why Bard wrecks so good in the late game is because he can roam early and quicker than his counterparts due to his E magical journey. He can 1v1 squishy champs in the late game due to collecting his chimes, and he can CC the enemy jungler or other carries on the enemy team to disrupt their objectives, such as Baron. On number 14 we have Azir. Azir is regarded by many as the strongest late game in the whole roster of League of Legends. However, his difficulty stops many from ever reaching that peak potential. Those that do master Azir are absolute terrors on the Rift, especially in the late game. His zoning of an area is undisputed due to the abilities using Sand Soldiers. By level 13, Azir can max out his W Arise and his Q, Conquering Sands, which allows Azir to attack, dealing tons of damage in a really short amount of time. Azir is so good as a late game champion because he can Shurima Shuffle a target into turret range or split the team up, ideally picking off the carry. If you don't know what a Shurima Shuffle is, it is when you Q past the target, E to Sand Soldiers and ultimate target back to where you were. He can prevent all-in attacks with his mobility and Sand Soldiers, and he can use his passive Shurima's Legacy to zone an area defensively or aggressively. Coming up on number 13 we have Fiora. Late game is where Fiora blossoms as a champion. She is able to put her third and final point into her ultimate Grand Challenge, which really helps Fiora in teamfights or 1v1s. She can use her dueling abilities to pick off any lone enemies as long as she has farmed correctly or has significant gold and items, hence why late game is her area of expertise. The AoE heal that Fiora gets from successfully ulting a champion can really help her and her teammates during a teamfight. Fiora as a late game champion can split push very effectively and pick off any enemies that come her way. She can often carry a weaker team when the late game has reached, and Fiora has golden items, and once she is full build, she is very strong in the late game. Coming up on number 12 we have Cho'Gath. The Terror of the Void is always a monster, but more so late game. Any champion that relies on feature stacks in their kit is great in the late game. More stacks equals to a greater late game. Cho'Gath can initiate teamfights with his Q Rupture and pick off any enemies caught in it. Cho'Gath can choose 2 different paths, depending on what his team needs. He can be unbelievably tanky in the late game or deal a hell of a lot of damage. Cho'Gath as a late game champion can use his R Feast to execute and kill any straying enemies. He can use his R to help secure objectives such as Baron or Elder, which can turn the tide of a game. And he should stick with his team and use his threatening presence as a weapon. Coming up on number 11 we have Jinx. Jinx, when fed, is an absolute terror on the Rift. If Jinx gains enough gold to get the correct item, the game is basically over. In the late game, it is important for Jinx to position herself well. If she roams alone, she is still squishy enough to be killed in a 1v1. However, if Jinx stays with her team towards the backline near the support, she can safely pick off enemy champions using her auto attacks Q, W, and then execute them with R if needed. She's a great late-game champion because she can kite the enemy team into oblivion. She has self-heal potential after maxing out 2 abilities at level 13, and activating her passive will help her destroy enemy teams tremendously. Coming up on number 10 we have Senna. Like others on this list, Senna's passive stacks over time, and the longer the game, the more stacks she has, the more potential to get. If Senna is able to land her W, Last Embrace, on one or multiple targets, she can pick any squishy champs off within a number of hits. She's undeniably strong late game, if everything goes okay in early and mid. Senna's ultimate is global and very helpful in teamfights, as it deals a ton of damage but also shields her teammates, which can turn the tide against the other team. Senna as a late game champ has great heal and shield for her fellow teammates, can pick off champions with her incredible range and can CC targets. On number 9 we have Jax. Jax is a late game champion that thrives on the Kiora at 1v5 whenever he hits his power spike. We don't recommend that you 1v5, but if you're prone to getting caught out, Jax is the best champion for the pick. When Jax hits level 13, we can max out his Q, Leap Strike, to deal a huge amount of damage. As the game progresses, Jax can get more items and get his full build to reach his full potential. Getting a defensive item on Jax is recommended as he needs to survive to deal the insane DPS. Imagine if he had a real weapon. Jax as a late game champ can split push and hopefully 1v1 any unsuspecting carry that's farming in top or bot. He can hide in the jungle and take down unsuspecting enemies, and he can basically duel anyone of the enemy team. Coming up on number 8 we have Cassiopeia. In the late game phase, Cassiopeia's main focus is to stay alive. If she is positioned correctly, she can continue to deal a huge amount of damage and try to get her ult Petrifying Gaze off on the entire enemy team. This one moment can win the game. Cassiopeia needs to remain with her teammates so she doesn't get picked off. After reaching level 13, she hits a power spike due to her Q, Noxious Blast, and her E, Twin Fang, both being maxed out. As a late game champ, she needs to stay safe in order to dish out DPS. She can change the game with a well-timed ult and has a huge power spike. Up and coming on number 7 we have Veigar. Veigar's passive is the reason this champion wrecks in the late game phase. The unlimited AP scaling allows Veigar to continuously increase his AP to absurd levels, so when the late game phase begins, Veigar can easily one-shot squishy targets. Teamfights in tight areas are exactly what Veigar needs to destroy the enemy team. If he can stun with his E, Event Horizon, he can quickly take down a number of targets using his Q, Baleful Strike, his W, Dark Matter, and his R, Primordial Burst. Seriously, Veigar as a late game champion is basically an assassin. He is a great asset in teamfights due to his stun capabilities. He has insane damage based on his infinite scaling, and items to boost his passive, and he can one-shot squishy targets with his ultimate. On number 6 we have Master Yi. Master Yi is one of the biggest menaces in the game. His Q Alpha Strike coupled with his ultimate Highlander makes him almost unstoppable. When he focuses on the backline of the enemy team, he can devastate. He can even solo Baron. Focusing on the carries of the enemy team, Yi can take out any heavy hitters while the rest of the team distracts any tanks. As long as Yi can avoid CC or wait until the CC is down, he can go in and wreck hard. As a late game champ, he should use the Fog of War to attack the carry. He can chase down any attacking enemies with ease, and has one of the highest DPSs in the game, and tons of true damage, so he also melts tanks. Now, to start off our top 5 we have Twitch. This little sneaky rat is arguably one of the best hyper carries of the game. Twitch's ability is to deal insane amount of damage is highly dependent on his items and his placement in the fight. However, Twitch can be easily all-in. To counter this, Twitch can stay with the team and towards the backline. His R, Spray and Pray, can cause mayhem for the enemy team in teamfights. Twitch's Q, Ambush and E, Contaminate combo is very strong and can pick up many kills for the Rat. As a late game champ, he can use Invisible using his Q, he can use Slow with his W and can ult an E to take out multiple targets. On number 4 we have Nazuj. Nazuj is a farmer for the first 2 phases of the game, but if he farms his Q, siphoning strike enough, he becomes a one-hitting monster in the late game. With a short cooldown on his Q, Nazuj can stomp out the entire enemy team. He is naturally tanky and can use his W Wither to single out an enemy carry and Q them to death. Nazuj as a late game champ can tank the enemy team and cause big damage, W the enemy carry and pick them off, and ult to stay alive and self-peel. On our 3rd spot we have Kayle. In the late game phase, Kayle is one of the champions that the other team should target in order to initiate the teamfight. With her alive, the chances of the other team winning the fight are significantly lower. When Kayle reaches her ultimate form at level 16, she has a huge power spike that affects her abilities. Kayle can peel in teamfights and use her ultimate on the ADC if they are doing well, or herself if she is the carry. As a late game champ, she deals a hell of a lot of damage, so she needs to be in every teamfight. Her auto attacks are permanently at their highest damaging state, and she can save the carry with her ultimate. On the 2nd spot we have Kassadin. Kassadin is one of the best late game champs in the game. Once he hits level 16, he can put the final point in his ultimate Riftwalk, allowing him to use his ultimate with very little cooldown timer. He is a very good champion for popping into the middle of teamfights, bursting the enemy down, and then quickly escaping the scene. Therefore, he is fantastic for late game teamfights. He deals a whole of a lot of damage when he's fed and has full build. As a late game champ, he can abuse his ultimate mercilessly, he can gank enemies and escape with a kill, and can flank the enemy team, and before they know it, they're dead. And for our number 1 spot, can you guess it? That's right, it's Vayne. The monster hunter herself sits at the number 1 spot. Her Q, Tumble and W Silver Bolts really helps her secure kills in the late game phase. When Vayne hits 16 and can max her ultimate Final Hour, the power spike is insane. She can annihilate the enemy team at this point with the right items. Her early game is very weak, so she should be played carefully until the laning phase is done. As a late game champ relies on her R to give her Q invisibility, increasing her chances of securing the kills. She can carry the team if she reaches late game without messing up in the early phase. She can use her mobility and positioning to kite the enemies down and win the team fight. She also melts tanks and deals ton of true damage, so no one is safe. And that's it for our list, guys. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe. If you disagree with the list, let us know in the comments down below. That's it for today, guys. See you next time. Peace.